an original narrative, created especially for Shadows of Love. Elena Ward clutched her press badge as rain lashed against the crumbling villa's windows, each drop echoing like a warning through the marble halls. The assignment was supposed to be simple. Investigate a decade-old disappearance in this sleepy coastal town, then return to Rome. Instead, she found herself standing before Marco Santoro, a man whose dark eyes held secrets deeper than the Mediterranean itself. His fingers, adorned with a single silver ring, traced the rim of his whiskey glass as lightning illuminated the scars on his knuckles. "You're asking dangerous questions about a dead priest," he said, his voice as smooth as the aged liquor between them. When thunder cracked outside, Elena flinched, but Marco didn't. Men who faced death, she realized, no longer fear the sky's anger. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Elena's rental car sputtered and died on the coastal road, just as darkness swallowed the last traces of daylight. Her phone showed no signal, typical for these remote Italian hillsides. She grabbed her bag, tucking her recorder and notebook inside her jacket to protect them from the downpour, and began walking. The assignment had seemed straightforward when her editor pitched it. Investigate rumors surrounding Father Tommaso's disappearance 10 years ago in the sleepy town of Porto Nero. The local authorities had declared it a drowning, case closed. But anonymous letters to the newspaper suggested otherwise. Whispers of confession, sin, and silence bought with blood. Elena had built her career on uncovering truths others tried to bury. At 32, she had already won recognition for exposing corruption in Rome's City Hall. This story promised to be her biggest yet, if she could find evidence linking the priest's disappearance to the notorious Santoro family that once controlled the region. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a winding driveway ahead. Through the curtain of rain, she made out the silhouette of a villa perched on the cliffside, its windows glowing with warm light. Shelter, at least. The massive wooden doors opened before she could knock. A tall man with silver-streaked black hair stood in the entrance, backlit by amber light. His expression shifted from annoyance to curiosity. "I'm sorry to intrude," Elena said, water dripping from her hair. "My car broke down on the road. I was hoping I could use a phone." He studied her for a long moment. "The lines are down. The storm." His voice was deep, accented with the regional dialect, but refined by education. He stepped aside, allowing her entry into the marble foyer. The villa's interior surprised her. Not the opulent showcase she expected, but a place of faded elegance. Antique furniture, walls lined with books, and the lingering scent of lemon and cedar. "Marco Vanni," he introduced himself, taking her soaked jacket. "And you are?" "Elena Ward. I'm a journalist with Il Messaggero." She hesitated before adding, "I'm here researching a story." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Caution, perhaps recognition. What kind of story brings a journalist from Rome to our forgotten corner during the worst storm of the year? Before she could answer, an elderly woman appeared, her stern face softening at the sight of Elena's drenched state. "Signore, I've prepared the blue room for our guest. The road will be impassable until morning." Marco nodded. "Grazie, Sophia." To Elena, he said, "It seems you'll be staying the night. We can discuss your research over dinner." Dinner was served in a room overlooking the churning sea. Lightning periodically illuminated the violent waves crashing against the cliffs below. Elena noticed how Marco positioned himself with his back to the wall, eyes constantly moving to the windows and doors, the habits of a man accustomed to watching for threats. "You haven't told me what story brings you here," he said, pouring wine into her glass. I'm investigating the disappearance of Father Tommaso Benelli. She watched his face carefully. The priest who vanished 10 years ago. His expression remained neutral, but his hand stilled momentarily. An old tragedy. The sea claims many lives here. Except they never found his body, Elena countered. And recently, letters have surfaced suggesting his disappearance might be connected to a confession he heard, one involving the Santoro family. Marco set down his glass. The Santoros have been gone from this region for years. Their influence died with the old Don. Not entirely. His sons are also gone, he interrupted sharply. Then, composing himself, "You're chasing ghosts, Miss Ward." Sophia entered, clearing their plates with efficiency that spoke of decades of service. Elena noticed how the woman's eyes never left Marco, watching him with a mixture of deference and protection. After dinner, Marco led her through the villa's winding corridors. The building seemed to hold its breath, as if listening to their footsteps. They passed a locked door where Marco paused almost imperceptibly before continuing. "This place has history," Elena observed. "Everything here does." His voice softened. The villa belonged to a shipping merchant who built it for his wife in the 1800s. It's seen love, death, war, and peace. The walls remember more than people do. They reached a blue-walled bedroom with a 4-poster bed and windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. The storm continued its assault outside, making the glass tremble. "Where will I sleep?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. Marco looked at her, his expression unreadable in the half-light. "Here, if you can trust me." The question hung between them. Not a threat, but an acknowledgement of their situation. She was alone in a stranger's house, miles from town, investigating a case that had remained buried for a decade. "Do I have reason not to?" she challenged. "Everyone in Porto Nero has secrets, Miss Ward, including me." He stepped toward the door. "But you're safe here tonight. There are rules to protection in these parts. Once you're under someone's roof, your safety becomes their honor." Even a journalist asking uncomfortable questions? His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Especially then. Questions can be dangerous, not just for those being asked, but for those doing the asking." After he left, Elena unpacked her recorder and notebook. Through the storm's noise, she could hear muffled voices downstairs. Marco speaking urgently in dialect too rapid for her to follow. She moved to the window, watching lightning illuminate the grounds. For an instant, she glimpsed a man standing guard at the property's gate. Collar turned up against the rain, the outline of a holster visible beneath his jacket. Not just a villa owner, then. Something more. Elena opened her notebook, adding this observation to her notes. Marco Vanni was hiding something. His reaction to Father Tommaso's name had been too controlled, too practiced. And now armed guards in the rain. She thought about the locked door they'd passed. Marco's momentary hesitation there. What lay behind it? Evidence, perhaps? Or just another piece of the villa's long history? The storm showed no signs of relenting. She was trapped here until morning, surrounded by secrets and shadows. But Elena had built her career on navigating dangerous waters. Tomorrow, she would begin unraveling the mystery of the missing priest and the true identity of the man who had given her shelter. She just needed to survive the night first. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the distant sound of waves. The storm had passed, leaving behind a crystalline morning. She dressed quickly and slipped into the hallway, pausing at the locked door that had caught her attention the previous night. In daylight, She noticed the intricate carvings on its frame, symbols of protection, ancient and worn by time. Voices drifted up from below. She followed them to a sunlit kitchen where Sophia was preparing coffee. The elderly woman looked up, her weathered face revealing nothing. "Buongiorno," Elena said. "Is Signor Vanni around?" "The master has business in town. He left instructions for Dante to repair your car." Sophia poured coffee into a delicate cup. "He suggests you remain here until he returns." Elena accepted the coffee. "That's kind. But I should get to town. My work will wait," Sophia interrupted firmly. "These roads are treacherous after storms. Landslides." She busied herself with breakfast preparations. Besides, the master rarely invites guests. It would be impolite to leave so hastily. The way she said master rather than signore struck Elena as oddly formal, almost feudal. "You've worked for Signor Vanni a long time?" Sophia's hands stilled. "I served his family before him. Through changes." "What kind of changes?" The woman's eyes flickered to a framed photograph on the wall, a younger Marco standing beside an older man with the same commanding presence. "Life changes. Death changes. Porto Nero was different once." Elena studied the photograph. The older man looked familiar. She'd seen his face in her research files. "That's not Marco Vanni," she said slowly. "That's Vittorio Santoro with his son Marco." Sophia's face drained of color. "You shouldn't speak of things you don't understand." "I understand that Marco Vanni is actually Marco Santoro, son of Don Vittorio Santoro, who controlled this region's criminal enterprises for decades." Elena set down her cup. "What I don't understand is why he's living under an alias in his family's old villa, pretending to be someone else." The kitchen door swung open. A broad-shouldered man with a scarred face entered, his eyes cold as he assessed Elena. "Sophia," the master called. "He's returning early." His gaze never left Elena. "Said to keep our guest comfortable." The threat beneath the courtesy was unmistakable. "Dante," Sophia said. "Miss Ward was just expressing her gratitude for our hospitality." Elena recognized him as the guard she'd glimpsed last night. "Actually, I was asking about Marco Santoro's connection to Father Tommaso Benelli." Dante's hand moved instinctively toward his waist before stopping. "The master will be home soon. Perhaps save your questions for him." Left alone after breakfast, Elena explored the villa's ground floor. The building was a maze of rooms, some preserved like museums, others modernized for comfort. In the library, she found volumes dating back centuries, many on local history. One book lay open on a desk, marked at a chapter about the region's church. A noise drew her attention. Through the window, she spotted Marco Santoro, returning, speaking intensely with Dante. When they disappeared from view, Elena seized her chance. She hurried upstairs to the locked door. Journalists developed certain skills in their line of work. Lockpicking was one Elena had found occasionally useful. Within minutes, the lock yielded. The room beyond was dark, curtains drawn against the morning light. Elena fumbled for a switch, illuminating what appeared to be a private office. Unlike the rest of the villa, this space was ruthlessly modern. Computer equipment, filing cabinets, and a wall covered with photographs, documents, and maps connected by red string. At the center, Father Tommaso Benelli. Surrounding him were photos of the Santoro family, newspaper clippings about disappearances, and police reports. Elena moved closer, heart racing. This wasn't just research. It was an investigation board. Marco wasn't hiding evidence. He was searching for it. "Finding what you're looking for?" Elena spun around. Marco stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. "You're Marco Santoro," she said, refusing to show fear. "Son of Vittorio Santoro, who died 5 years ago in a war with the Calabrian families." He closed the door behind him. "And yet, here you are, alone with me, breaking into my private rooms. Either very brave or very foolish. I'm a journalist. We're often both." She gestured to the wall. "You're investigating Father Tommaso's disappearance too. Why?" Something shifted in his eyes, a decision being made. "Because I believe my brother had him killed." The confession hung in the air between them. 10 years ago, Marco continued, moving to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter. "Father Tommaso heard a confession that implicated my younger brother, Luca, in a murder. A young woman from the village. He swirled the amber liquid. The seal of confession protected him. But Luca was unstable, paranoid. He believed the priest would eventually talk. So he had him killed? I believe so. I was in Milan when it happened. My father had sent me to oversee our legitimate businesses. By the time I returned, Father Tommaso was gone, and the official story was drowning." He drained his glass. "I confronted Luca. He denied everything, but I knew my brother. I saw the truth in his eyes." "What did you do?" "Nothing." Bitterness edged his voice. "Family loyalty, the code we lived by. I buried my suspicions until Luca died in the same conflict that claimed my father." He gestured to the investigation board. "Only then did I start looking for the truth." Elena studied him. "Why change your name? Why hide who you are?" "When my father and brother died, I had a choice. Take control of what remained of our organization, or walk away. I chose to walk away." His eyes met hers. "Marco Santoro died that day. Marco Vanni bought this villa and lives quietly. But you kept the guards, the protection. Old habits, old enemies." He approached her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Now you know who I am. The question is, what will you do with that information?" Before she could answer, Dante burst in. "Master, there's a situation. Men asking questions in town about the journalist's car." Marco's expression hardened. "Who?" "Calabrians, by their accent." Elena felt cold fear settle in her stomach. Marco turned to her, his voice low and urgent. "It seems your questions have stirred ghosts, Ms. Ward. Dangerous ones." Night fell over the villa as Marco and Dante conferred in hushed tones. Elena remained in the library, trying to process everything she'd learned. Marco Santoro, heir to a criminal empire who had walked away from power, now living as a recluse obsessed with solving a decade-old murder. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt a disturbing fascination. The door opened, and Marco entered alone. "The men in town have left, but they'll be back. They're not local. Hired muscle from the mainland." "Looking for me?" Elena asked. "Or you?" "Both, perhaps." He sat across from her. "Your investigation has drawn attention. The past doesn't stay buried in places like Porto Nero. Why help me? I'm a threat to your anonymity." Marco's gaze was steady. "Perhaps I'm tired of secrets." Something in his voice made her look up. In the lamplight, his features seemed softer, the hardness in his eyes replaced by weariness. "You could have taken over your family's organization," she said. "Instead, you disappeared. Why?" He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "I watched what power did to my father, to Luca. The constant fear, the isolation, the blood on their hands." His fingers traced the edge of an antique map on the table. "I wanted something different. Redemption? Peace? He looked up. But some debts can't be escaped. Father Tommaso deserves justice, even if it comes from the son of the family that likely killed him. Elena leaned forward. Let me help. My investigation, your resources. We could find the truth. And then what? You publish a story exposing everything? Mafia heir seeks redemption by solving priest's murder? Bitterness edged his voice. The moment my identity becomes public, every old enemy and ambitious criminal will come for what remains of the Santoro legacy, including me. Not if we find proof that clears your name. There is no clearing my name, Elena. I am who I am by birth, by blood. He stood abruptly. Get some rest. Tomorrow, Dante will take you to retrieve your car. But sleep eluded Elena. The villa creaked and whispered around her, its ancient walls holding a century of secrets. Near midnight, she ventured downstairs for water and found Marco in the kitchen, staring out at the moonlit sea. Couldn't sleep? He asked without turning. Too many questions. She poured herself water. You said Father Tommaso heard a confession about a murdered girl. Who was she? Marco's shoulders tensed. Maria Conti, 19. She worked in our household. One morning, she didn't arrive for work. 3 days later, fishermen found her body in the bay. And your brother confessed to killing her? Not to me. But Father Tommaso came to our house afterward, demanded to speak with my father privately. They argued. A week later, the priest disappeared. Elena moved beside him at the window. You loved her, Maria. His sharp intake of breath confirmed her intuition. We were young. It was impossible. The Don's son and a servant girl. His voice roughened. My father sent me to Milan. While I was gone, Luca killed her out of jealousy? Marco nodded, the moonlight catching the moisture in his eyes. I should have protected her. I should have taken her away from here. Without thinking, Elena touched his arm. You were young, bound by family expectations. That doesn't absolve me. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then met her eyes. Nothing does. The moment stretched between them. Recognition of shared understanding, of boundaries blurring. Then gunfire shattered the night. Windows exploded inward. Marco tackled Elena to the floor as bullets sprayed the kitchen. Stay down, he shouted, pulling a gun from beneath the counter. Dante appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn. 3 men coming up from the beach path. Marco dragged Elena behind the heavy oak table. Get to the panic room, he ordered Dante. Take her with you. I'm not leaving you, Dante growled. That wasn't a request. Marco's voice carried the unmistakable tone of command, the voice of a man born to give orders. More gunfire. Elena flinched as wood splintered around them. Go! Marco pushed her toward Dante. I'll hold them off. Dante grabbed her arm, pulling her through the villa's dark corridors. Behind them, gunshots continued, punctuated by breaking glass and shouted curses. They reached a hidden door behind a bookcase in the library. Get inside, Dante ordered. What about Marco? The master can handle himself. As if to contradict him. They heard a cry of pain from the direction they'd come. Dante hesitated, torn between duty and loyalty. Go, Elena said. Help him. I'll stay here. After securing her in the panic room, Dante disappeared. Elena paced the small space, listening to the muffled sounds of violence. Minutes stretched endlessly until the door finally opened. Dante supported a bleeding Marco, easing him into a chair. Flesh wound. Marco grunted as Elena rushed to his side. They're gone, for now. Who were they? she demanded, helping Dante clean the bullet graze on Marco's shoulder. Calabrians. Old rivals. Marco winced as Dante applied pressure. They've been watching the villa since you arrived. Your questions about Father Tommaso spooked them. Why would they care about a dead priest? Marco's eyes met hers. Because they're protecting someone who ordered both Maria's death and the priest's. Not Luca. My brother was a violent man, but he wasn't smart enough to cover his tracks so completely. He was the weapon, not the hand that guided it. Marco gripped her wrist suddenly. This is why you need to leave, Elena? This isn't just about a story anymore. But as she looked at him, wounded, vulnerable, yet still fighting ghosts from his past, Elena knew she couldn't walk away. Not from the story, not from him. I'm staying, she said quietly. We'll find the truth together. His fingers tightened around hers. Then God help us both. Dawn broke over a villa transformed into a fortress. Marco's men, more numerous than Elena had realized, secured the perimeter while Sofia swept up broken glass with stoic efficiency. The attack had changed everything. What began as an investigation had become a battle for survival. Marco found Elena in the library, researching on her laptop. Dante's taking you to the train station in Genoa. You'll be safe there. She didn't look up. I'm not leaving. This isn't a negotiation. Those men will return with reinforcements. I'm close to something. She turned her computer to show him. I've been cross-referencing news reports from the time of Maria's murder. 3 days after her body was found, your father made a large donation to a foundation controlled by Judge Romano, the same judge who ruled her death an accident despite evidence of strangulation. Marco studied the screen. My father often made donations. Political insurance. The foundation was dissolved 2 years later, after the judge died of a heart attack. But before that, it made a single payment to a shell company registered to Antonio Vassallo. Marco went still. Vassallo was my father's consigliere. And your brother's godfather? Elena added. He disappeared around the same time Father Tommaso did. Tony would never betray my father. But doubt had crept into Marco's voice. Unless he was protecting someone else. Elena pulled up another document. Vassallo had a daughter, Sofia. Sofia, Marco corrected, automatically, then froze. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Our housekeeper, Sofia? That's impossible. She's been with our family for 40 years, Elena finished. Long enough to become invisible, the perfect confidant. Marco sank into a chair, his worldview visibly shifting. You think Sofia arranged Maria's murder? Why? I don't know yet. But she has access to everything, your father's secrets, your brother's movements. If she wanted to protect your family from scandal. The door opened, and Sofia herself entered with a tray of coffee. Her eyes moved between them, registering the sudden silence. I've prepared your things for departure, Miss Ward, she said, setting down the tray. The roads should be clear now. Thank you, Sofia, Marco said, his tone carefully neutral. That will be all. After she left, Marco leaned close to Elena. We need proof before making accusations. Sofia practically raised me, which makes her betrayal even harder to accept. Elena touched his hand. I understand. Their fingers intertwined briefly before Marco pulled away. I need to check something. Stay here. Alone, Elena continued her research. The pieces were coming together. Maria's murder, Father Tommaso's disappearance, the Calabrian attack, all connected by invisible threads of loyalty and betrayal. Her phone buzzed. A message from her editor in Rome. Where are you? Sources say Calabrians moving on Porto Nero. Big story brewing. Call immediately. How did her editor know about the Calabrians? She hadn't filed any reports yet. The door burst open. Marco stormed in, face dark with fury. You need to leave. Now. What happened? Sophia's gone. So are some of my files on Father Tommaso. He ran a hand through his hair. And I found this in her room. He tossed a press badge onto the table, not Elena's, but bearing the same newspaper's logo. I don't understand. Your newspaper has been investigating my family for years. Sophia has been feeding them information, probably since before my father died. His eyes hardened. Was that why you came here? Part of some long-term operation? No, I had no idea Sophia was a source. Elena grabbed her own press credentials. Look at the issue date. I've only worked there 8 months. Marco studied her badge, conflict evident in his expression. Then why did your editor send you specifically? Of all the journalists? A terrible suspicion formed in Elena's mind. She checked her phone messages again, scrolling back weeks. There it was, her editor's original assignment brief, including a note she'd overlooked. Source suggests starting at the old Santoro villa. New owner may have connections. I was set up, she whispered. My editor knew exactly where to send me. They've been planning this. Marco's expression darkened further. Using you as bait to flush me out. The Calabrians attack, I'm exposed, and your newspaper gets its headline. Santoro heir discovered alive. I had no part in this, Elena insisted. Perhaps not knowingly. Marco paced the room. But intention doesn't matter now. The damage is done. Elena's phone rang, her editor again. Marco nodded for her to answer, putting it on speaker. Elena, where's my story? Her editor demanded. Our sources say the Santoro heir is alive and living in Porto Nero. I need confirmation, photos, everything. How long have you known? Elena asked, watching Marco's face. Known what? That Marco Santoro was alive? That Sofia Vassallo was your source? Silence, then. Who's listening to this call? Answer her, Marco said, his voice deadly quiet. The editor sighed. We've suspected for years. Sofia contacted us after Vittorio died, offering information in exchange for protection if things went wrong. We've been building the case slowly. When Father Tommaso's old letters surfaced, we needed someone to verify Marco's identity, someone with fresh eyes who wouldn't spook him. So you sent me in blind, Elena said bitterly. It's the story of your career, Elena. The Santoro Empire's hidden heir, seeking redemption by solving a priest's murder. It's Pulitzer material. Marco ended the call. His eyes met Elena's, filled with betrayal and resignation. It seems we've both been pawns. Before she could respond, Dante burst in. Calabrians on the move. At least 20 men heading this way. They'll reach us by nightfall. Marco's decision was immediate. Prepare the escape route. We leave in 30 minutes. And her? Dante nodded toward Elena. Marco's gaze was impenetrable. She comes with us. It's not safe for her here either. As Dante left, Elena approached Marco. I never intended, I know. He cut her off. But intentions don't matter now. By morning, everyone will know Marco Santoro is alive. Old enemies, rival families, corrupt officials, they'll all come for what they think I still possess. Your father's connections? The organization? Power. He touched her cheek briefly. The one thing I walked away from. The one thing they all crave. In that moment, Elena saw the weight he carried, the legacy he'd rejected, the peace he'd sought, the truth he still hunted. and she realized her story had shattered what little tranquility he'd found. "I'll fix this," she promised. "I'll write the truth, all of it. Clear your name." His smile was sad. "Some names can't be cleared, Elena. Some debts can only be paid in blood." As they prepared to leave the villa, Elena looked back at the home Marco had made for himself, now violated by violence and exposure. In trying to uncover one truth, she had destroyed another. By nightfall, they would both be running for their lives. 6 months passed. Elena stood at the entrance to the cemetery in Porto Nero, autumn leaves swirling around her feet. The small coastal town had returned to its sleepy rhythm after the explosion of violence that had rocked it that spring. Few locals would discuss what happened the night the old Santoro villa burned, or the gunfight that had left 5 Calabrian enforcers dead on the cliffside road. Fewer still would mention Marco Santoro. She walked between weathered headstones until she reached a fresh grave marked with a simple cross. Father Tommaso Bonelli's remains had finally been recovered from an unmarked grave on the grounds of an abandoned Calabrian estate. DNA testing confirmed what Marco had suspected. The priest had been executed for what he knew. Elena placed white lilies on the grave. "We found the truth," she whispered, "just as he wanted." Her article, Confession, the Last Testament of Father Tommaso, had sent shockwaves through Italy. Not the sensationalized exposé her editor had wanted, but a meticulously researched account of corruption, murder, and one man's quest for redemption. She had written the truth. How Maria Conti had discovered financial documents proving Judge Romano and Antonio Vassallo were embezzling from Santoro family businesses. How Sofia, desperate to protect her father, had manipulated Luca Santoro's violent tendencies, suggesting Maria was betraying the family. How Father Tommaso, bound by the seal of confession, could not reveal Luca's admission, but had confronted Vittorio with his suspicions about Sofia and Antonio's corruption. The truth had cost Elena her job. Her editor had wanted blood and scandal, the resurrection of Marco Santoro, Mafia heir. Instead, she delivered a story of betrayal, manipulation, and a man who had walked away from power to seek justice. "I thought I might find you here." Elena turned. Marco stood a few paces away, changed from when she'd last seen him. His hair was shorter, his face leaner, but his eyes held the same intensity. "You shouldn't be in Italy," she said. "It's not safe. Some risks are worth taking." He moved beside her, looking down at Father Tommaso's grave. "Your article cleared my name, as much as it could ever be cleared. The authorities have reopened investigations into Judge Romano's dealings and Antonio Vassallo's disappearance," Elena said. "Sofia is cooperating in exchange for leniency. My father's consigliere and his daughter. The betrayal that destroyed everything." Marco shook his head. "All for money and power. And Maria? What would she have wanted?" Marco's expression softened. "Peace. She always said we find redemption in truth, not vengeance." He touched the simple silver cross hanging from a chain around his neck. "Father Tommaso told me the same once." They stood in silence, autumn sunlight filtering through cypress trees. So much had happened since that stormy night when Elena's car had broken down. The villa attack, their escape through underground tunnels as Calabrian gunmen closed in, the desperate weeks in hiding while Elena pieced together the full story from Marco's files and her own research. Their separation had come suddenly, Marco disappearing one morning with only a note. "Finish the story. It's the only protection either of us has now." "Why did you leave?" she asked finally, "that morning in Naples." "To draw attention away from you." My contacts warned that contract killers were looking for both of us. His hand found hers. I couldn't risk your life any further. So you risked yours instead. A fair exchange. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Your truth for my protection. Elena turned to face him fully. And now? The Calabrians have retreated since the arrests began. Your father's old associates believe you fled to South America. Where will you go? That depends. His eyes held hers. I bought a small vineyard near Siena. Nothing grand, just a house, some land. A place to start over. Alone? That's what I've come to ask. He took both her hands in his. You once asked where you would sleep, and I said, here, if you can trust me. Now I'm asking you the same question. Elena thought of everything that had happened. The danger, the betrayal, the truth they'd uncovered together. She thought of her uncertain future, her career in shambles after defying her editor. Trust doesn't come easily to either of us, she said softly. No. But perhaps that makes it more valuable when given. He released her hands. You don't need to answer now. The vineyard will be there if you're ready. As he turned to leave, Elena caught his arm. The night we met, you said there were rules to protection in Porto Nero. That once someone was under your roof, their safety became your honor. Yes. Does that work both ways? She stepped closer. If I offer you shelter, does your safety become my honor? Understanding dawned in his eyes. Elena, I have an apartment in Florence. It's small, but the building has good security. No one would look for Marco Santoro there. What about Elena Ward? What does she want? The same thing you do. She touched the scar on his shoulder from the bullet he'd taken the night of the attack. Peace, truth, a chance to build something that isn't defined by the past. Marco's hand came up to cradle her face. I can't promise safety. Even with my name cleared, there will always be those who remember the Santoro legacy. I'm not asking for promises. Elena leaned into his touch. Just trust. The rest we'll figure out together. As they left the cemetery, Marco took her hand. Behind them, sunlight caught the silver cross marking Father Tommaso's grave, making it shine like a benediction against the shadows of the past. Ahead lay Florence, Siena, and possibilities neither had dared imagine 6 months before. Not redemption, perhaps. Some debts could never be fully paid. But something equally precious. A future unwritten. A story of their own making.